Ptolemy V Epiphanes married Cleopatra Syra, princess of the Seleucid Empire. This royal marriage would bring a bond between the Egyptians and the Syrians that would last through the form of a royal priesthood. Ptolemy V was a descendant of Ptolemy I, who was the companion of Alexander the Great, while Cleopatra, a Syrian, was the daughter of Antiochus the Great, who can trace her lineage back to Seleucus, also another general of Alexander the Great. This was all the way back in 200 BCE, which sets us up. And when Pompey the Great conquers the East, he will allow the priesthoods of the Eastern realms to stay in place. For example, Jerusalem, the temple to Yahweh, as well as this Syrian priesthood of Elagabalus. And the reason why I bring this up is to set up the setting for Sohaemus of Emesa, a member of the royal family, second-born son and child to the priest king Sampsicaramus II, who ruled the Emesene kingdom from 14 until 42. He had an older brother named Gaius Julius Adzitzos, who was the first husband of the Herodian princess Drusilla, and had two sisters. Sohaemus was born and raised in Emesa. His paternal grandfather was the former Emesene priest king Iamblichus II, who was installed by none other than Augustus. Sohaemus married Drusilla, who was none other than the granddaughter of Mark Antony and Cleopatra, and they had a son named Gaius Julius Alexion. Sohaemus, during his reign, was crucial for the Roman Empire because when Titus and Vespasian came to conquer Israel, he was a key ally and aligned himself with the Romans against the Jews. This would allow the priesthood of Elagabalus to survive for another century. Which brings us to Julius Bassianus. Julius Bassianus was the high priest of Elagabalus at the Temple of the Sun in Emesa, Syria, where the solar deity was worshipped in the shape of a black stone, which was said to have fallen from heaven. The name Elagabalus derives from Allah, a Semitic word for God, and Gabal, Arab word for mountain, god of the mountain. Bassianus was a member of the royal family, which I just had described, tracing its roots back to the royal families of Ptolemy, Seleucus, Mark Antony, Cleopatra, and the Romans knew that this was a real royal priesthood that existed in the Eastern Roman Empire. Now, Bassianus had a daughter named Julia Domna, who married the Roman Emperor Septimus Severus. Julia Domna was so famous and so revered by the Romans, she was deified as Augusta Soteria. In Athens, we have a Greek inscription from 211 of the Common Era. The inscription records a decree of honors granted to her by the Athenians. She is given the title Savior, implying that the decree was in gratitude for some protection accorded to Athens. The surviving sections of the text are concerned particularly with honors that identify Julia Domna with the ancient protective goddess of Athens, Athena Polias. So her full title becomes the Savior of Athens, Julia Sebaste, translated in Latin as Augusta. Here is the translation that we get from Mary Beard. Of her inherent philanthropy, cooperating for all, the Savior of Athens, Julia Sebaste, I propose that in all other respects it should be done as my colleague in office, Elpidophoros, son of Aedes from Palin, during my absence proposed, all the annual archontes are to sacrifice to good fortune on the most holy birthday of Julia Sebaste Augusta, and to make Ceteria, the savior of Athens, Julia Augusta, Athena Polius, the general over the hoplites, the archon. The day of the month is to be holy, the day on which Athens dedicated the ancient temple to her. The war archon is to sacrifice to the mother of the forces on the first day of the Roman year, and these sacrifices are to be started by the priestess of Athena, and she will receive the prerequisites, and a golden statue of Julia Domna is to be set up in the Parthenon, and the general is to perform the preliminary sacrifice to good fortune in the archontes, and all the priests and the herald are to pour libations, and the priestess and the queen of the king archon are to sacrifice and to offer Asteria of the priesthood of Athena Polias, and retiring Araphori are also to sacrifice and raise the torch and dance at the festival, in order that through these events also our reverence towards the savior of Athens, Julia Sebaste, may be evident. The account of these matters shall be inscribed on a tablet and set up by the altar of the Augustoi, Sebastoi, on the Acropolis. No woman in the history of the Roman Empire has ever been granted such high deification other than the wife of Augustus himself. She was seen as Athena incarnate and a savioress, a soteria. Now, with that being said, I've just laid out to you there's a royal priesthood that's in Syria that traces its roots back to some of the most famous people in world history, according to the Romans and the Greeks. And we also have a deified woman, Julia Domna. Now, why did I tell you all this? You're looking at the title and saying, what does this have to do with Elagabalus? And when Severus died in 211, Domna became the mediator between their two sons, Caracalla and Geta, who inherited the throne. And she was the actual empress, the most powerful woman, the most powerful person, actually, in the entire Roman Empire. More powerful than Caracalla and Geta. And this royal family of Emesa produced a young boy named Elagabalus, who actually became the Roman emperor himself. This is what would change Roman religion forever. In 218 of the Common Era, he would transform Roman religion forever. Herodian tells us that when Elagabalus entered the city and was acclaimed the princeps, he enshrined Heliogabalus on the Palatine Hill next to the temple of the emperors, and built a temple for him, being eager to transfer to that temple both the emblem of the mother goddess and the fire of Vesta, the palladium, the sacred shield, and all the objects sacred to the Romans, so that no god should be worshipped at Rome except Heliogabalus. He used to say furthermore that the religion of the Jews and the Samaritans and the rites of the Christians ought to be transferred there, so that the priesthood of Heliogabalus might include the mysteries of every cult. This would be the move that would change the old pagan ways forever, coinciding with the rise of Neoplatonism and the rise of monotheism. This sun god worship religion became the central religion of Rome itself. A few decades later, Aurelian would dedicate a temple to Sol Invictus and would combine this Sol Invictus sun god worship that Elagabalus brought to Rome with the Mithraic religion and made this super Neoplatonist religion of Rome. Meanwhile, the Sabine religion itself, as well as the Orphic religion, begin to blend with Judeo-Christianity in Alexandria, Egypt. And a movement known as the Hypsisterian religion, a Greek monotheism, is rising in Anatolia. The letters of St. Paul and the Gospels are circulating throughout the Eastern Roman Empire at the same time as the rise of the Sol Invictus religion. And these Hypsisterians, or God worshippers, Theos worshippers, Greek monotheists, are becoming Christian. Christianity takes over in the eastern realms of the Roman Empire. And the Sabine oracles have text about Jesus as well as Nero being the Antichrist. So the Sabine books that were so central to Roman paganism are now central to Christianity. And as that is happening, Sol Invictus is the main god of Rome. He is a triad of Jupiter, Mithra, and Helios, or Apollo. But by the time Constantine becomes the emperor, these are the two major religions, Christianity and Sol Invictus. And Christianity becomes legalized because of how popular it is at this time among ecclesias, among Christ association groups, monastic orders throughout the Roman Empire. They now have their own funding. And within a couple decades after Constantine, Theodosius and his dynasty decide that Christianity would be the only religion going forward. They shut down the academy in Athens. They shut down the temple of Serapis. They shut down the Mithraeum of Mithras. They shut down the temple of Jupiter, Capitolinus. They shut down the temple of Athena, the temple of Artemis at Ephesus. All of these major pagan sites are now shut down in response to Julian the Apostate at the final attempt to restore the old ways of Rome, which was failure. And Christianity would be the only religion in the Western world for the next 1,000 years. When Aurelian dedicated the temple to Sol Invictus on December 25th, this became a national holiday, but Theodosius transferred this holiday to the birthday of Christ, which became Christmas. And many of the festivals throughout the Roman calendar were either completely removed or transferred into some sort of Christian festival, like Easter, for example. And Saturnalia would slowly morph into the holiday season. And that is the story of the evolution of Roman religion. Let me know what you guys think about that. If I left anything out, I really wanted to sweep through it quickly because there's a lot. All of these subjects can be an hour by itself. But I wanted to attempt to do a wide macro sweeping of history of the evolution of religion and focus on these key game changer moments of the Roman Empire and how it changes religion forever. And so, with that being said, you have attained true gnosis.